is, when people fight a war, Mr. David, why do they fight? People fight in order to get rid of something that is giving them pain. Whether that something is a tribal chief or a corrupt modern government. They want to fight to remove this burden or to be destroyed by it. That is the idea behind a rebellion. But in Africa, we find wars where a group of rebels challenges a government and tries to fight against it. And then these wars end in the total destruction of that particular country, where neither the rebels nor the government wins anymore. And why? Because you find this force of rebels facing the government, and all of a sudden the rebel army splits into little factions which start fighting each other and not the real enemy. And soon it becomes a situation where everybody is fighting everybody else and the whole thing is getting nowhere. I say that these wars which are destroying Africa this way are orchestrated by forces from outside Africa. Our peoples need development. Our people need peace in Africa. We are basically a peaceful people. We are not warlike. Don't let historians tell you a lot of rubbish. Africa is not perceived by the people outside her as she really is. One, my people are Zulus, a tribe famous for warrior exploits for many, many years now. But wait, do you know, sir, that Zulu people actually hated war and didn't love it, as historians would have you believe? We Zulu people call war impi, I-M-P-I, and we call evil imbi or ububi. Now the word impi and the word imbi come from exactly the same root, which means that which is evil. We call copper itusi, which means the helper, the frightener away of evil spirits. But we call iron insimbi, which means the evil metal, the metal of war. Now, when a Zulu went to battle, he spiritually prepared himself for fighting. But when he came back from battle, a Zulu would undergo a ceremony of purification, a very, very painful ritual, which lasted for some 7 days before he was even allowed to touch his wife. But wait for this. In England, we have got the lady Sarah Churchill, Duchess of Marlborough, writing in her diary that her husband, Sir John Churchill, the Duke of Marlborough, after the terrible Battle of Blenheim, had made love to her 3 times while still wearing his top boots. Wait, sir. Listen to that. Here is a man coming into his tent or whatever it was, with his boots still stinking with the blood of horses and the blood of men, and probably with human flesh still attached to the soles of those boots. Here is this man making love to his wife. What kind of attitude is that? That a man would come smelling of death and destruction to desecrate his wife in 3 torrid sessions? We never did that in Africa. We hated war. And furthermore, our people, the black people of Southern Africa, are accused of having been a male-dominated society. Absolute bloody poppycocks. Zulus were a female-dominated society. And if you want proof of that, ask yourself, who killed King Shaka? Who planned Shaka's murder? 2 women, twins, Mama and Mkabai, Shaka's aunts. Who was the greatest advisor of King Shaka? His mother, Nandi. She used to plan every one of Shaka's military campaigns, right down to the last detail. So, everywhere in South Africa, our word for great also means female, but that is something we shall discuss at another time. So, Africa is being murdered, and a race of people which once founded some of the world's greatest civilizations is being cruelly exterminated, and our politicians appear to be hypnotized as like a little antelope hypnotized by a python. Don't our leaders know what is going on in Africa? I'm going to talk, sir. I'm going to talk, and I'm going to reveal and damn the consequences. I am not a brave man, but it's high time somebody stood up and exposed the conspiracy around Africa and her people.
So let's start looking then at the force that is the common theme through all this history to the present day that's been manipulating these highly malevolent, highly destructive situations. My own research around the world has certainly focused in on the fact that there is a force not of this world, shall we say, that is the common theme. What is your experience and your knowledge of an extraterrestrial involvement in the history of Africa?
One of the most secret stories that was revealed to me, sir, is about these beings. This story was revealed to me first in Barotsident, then in the country today called Rwanda, once known as Rwanda Urundi. Then I learned about this story at that time on the foothills of Mount Kilimanjaro. This is the story, a story you find throughout Africa. There was once a time when the blue sky was invisible, when the whole world was covered with mist, when you could not see the sun as it is now. You only saw it as a splash of white light moving slowly across the sky. At that time, there was an eternal drizzle every day of the year. At that time, people could not see the stars. People only saw the trees growing, trees which were very, very big. There was no desert at that time, only jungle everywhere where you went. At that time, say, people were what we call in Zulu, ngubili. a human being was both male and female in one body. And out of the sky, one day came terrible objects. They were like gigantic bows made of huge gleaming gold. They were shaped like bows without strings, and they were bigger than the biggest mountains. They came out of the sky bringing great noise, black smoke, and fire with them. And out of those huge objects came them. At that time, sir, human beings could not speak. We had no gift of language at that time. And people had, however, great mental power. A man would go into the bush and, using the power of his mind, actually call out an animal which he wanted to hunt and kill for his children. And the animal would appear and kneel down before the man, and the man would kill the animal and take it home. But when the Chitauri arrived in Africa, they told our people that they were gods and that they were going to give us human beings great gifts on one condition. We had to worship them and accept them as our creators. Some told our people that they were our elder brothers and that this earth had produced them generations ago. And they said they had come back to the green womb of their mother and that they were going to make us into gods. What they did, they created a very strange pair of caves in the land. They dug 2 caves. In one cave was a green light, in another cave was a red light. And they drove human beings into these caves. And each human being had to choose which cave the human being wanted to go into. And those who went into the green cave came out as women. And those who went into the red cave came out as men. And then the talkers, the Chitauri, told our people that now they were perfect. But the moment the first men saw the first women, a terrible row erupted. The women hated the men because they looked between their legs and they saw what they thought were snakes dangling between the legs of the men. And the men hated the women because they looked on their chests and they saw these big things. What they were, they did not know. And then the Chitauri laughed. It was to them a very, very big joke. And then the Chitauri said, if you serve us, you wretched little human beings, we are going to make you into gods. And the human beings agreed to serve the Chitauri. And the Chitauri gave human beings a second gift, the gift of language. People started talking with their tongues where they had talked with their minds before. And there was a big rubbish starting again, because this man did not know the language of that man. And when this man greeted that man, this man thought that he was being insulted, and so a lot of murder and culpable homicide started taking place all over the world. When our people were given language, they found to their horror that they had lost much of their mental powers. They had paid a terrible price. But the Chitauri were now the masters of human beings. They made them, the human beings, to go into holes in the ground and to mine metal, gold, copper, tin, all kinds of metal the Chitauri forced our people to mine. And the people were very unhappy because they couldn't cope with the new sexual differences which were there now between men and women. And then from amongst the Chitauri came a very good female Chitauri. Her name was Mai Nzarantwari Samahongo. Mai Nzarantwari Samahongo was the senior wife of the terrible chief of the Chitauri, Umbaba Gorontwari Samahongo. She was sorry for human beings, this great reptile lady. She said to the poor people, "Ow, you are unhappy." And the people said, "Yes, great one. We go into the holes every day, we dig the stones and we bring it to the gods, but we are not happy." And Mai Nzarantwari scratched her scaly chin and began to think and to think. She was terribly ugly. Her eyes were awful, like lights in the darkness. But she had mercy in her heart, and she taught the men and the women how to make love. And she said, "Look, we divided you into males and females. Now this action is going to bring you together." But it did not, because anyone who receives a gift from the Ntwari, the children of the python, is always in trouble. What happened was that when one guy slept with his wife, he didn't find her much, so he went to steal another guy's wife, and there was a big remorse, as we say in Afrikaans, starting. So men started stealing each other's wives and each other's girlfriends, and women started stealing each other's husbands, and there was a big nonsense in the land. And King Umbaba, the terrible lord of the Ntwari, the reptile people, said, "Look what you've done, you stupid old woman. Now these people, they are making such a noise. Listen to all that screaming in the bush. They are busy making love there, and our gold is not being dug, and you are responsible for this." And Zarantwari thought and thought and thought and thought, and then she got a plan, and she said, "I will make them stop. When they make love to each other, the female is going to get pregnant. And when she is pregnant, the male is going to leave her alone, and that noise in the bush will not be so disturbing to you, my lord." And Umbaba said, "You had better. There is no production here." And so all the women in the world was pregnant, and Umbaba was furious with his wife. And so it went on and on until one day Nzarantwari activated a black hero called Mweru. And Mweru challenged the great chief of the serpent people to a fight. And he cut off the royal penis of the king of the snake people. And that caused a big war. Mweru ran away. But Umbaba, the terrible chief of the people, caught him and arrested him and brought him to his village. And there, the great chief Gorontwari Umbaba said, "Look, you cut off my thing, and I have replaced it with one made of gold, and I can't make love to my wife anymore. You think too much, you wretched little human being. Now, Umbaba had a terrible nail in one of his hands, a claw. And with this claw, he drove the claw into poor Mweru's nostril, making a terrible hole into his brain, and he started drinking Mweru's brain, and then he threw away the corpse. To this day, sir, we believe that the people, the Chitauri people, they eat human brains. And strangely enough, scientists have found skulls where the human brain has been removed and eaten by someone or something.